we all have wounds, right? Scars, experiences, traumas, being human. And sometimes those traumas we're able to talk about, and sometimes we don't feel safe to do so. And hopefully we find those people to talk about it with, if you have a therapist or dear friends or family members that you trust. For me at that time, I really didn't have anyone, not to sound dramatic, but I just didn't. I was a singer songwriter with, again, I just didn't have anyone around me who understood what I was going through and who I felt safe to talk about it with. I knew that music was my path. From the time I finished university, I was a volunteer in the Marshall Islands for a year. I came back to New York. I had so many different jobs to do what I was doing in music. And I came across this person who expressed interest in my music. And this isn't to say, I mean, I knew I had a lot of talent. I had a lot of confidence. It's all these things can coexist at the same time. And I recorded a song of his. He's a very talented songwriter. I learned a lot from him. And I looked up to him a lot. For me, he was a mentor. He was an established writer, not an established producer, but I felt that he really got me, and I felt safe with him. And there's so few times as a woman where you really feel safe. I didn't really have that awareness at the time, but I think that's what it was. I felt safe with him. And when you create music together, that is a very intimate process. We worked on 10 songs, or I guess 6 or 7 were co-writes. A few of them were written by him, and they were gorgeous. And I was absolutely in love with them. And yeah, we worked on this for a few years because, again, I was never the money project. So I was always waiting to get things done. And at some point, at least a year in, I kind of realized this guy, is interested in me in a different way. And as a woman, you just sometimes you just deal with that. What can you do about it? Now I don't know, 5 or 6 songs in, this, but we were friends. I was in a committed relationship at the time and for the entire time. And that's the person I stayed with for many, many years after that. And I couldn't really share how strange things were getting with my partner because he would have gone crazy. My parents didn't support my music career at all. And that was a difficult situation for many years with them. And I really didn't have any friends who were artists. I was on this journey alone, and there was no Instagram, there was no online community to talk about this stuff. There was literally no community. And although I had a lot of privilege in the sense that you went to this great school, have in terms of music business, I felt completely out on a limb. And I think a lot of artists must have felt that way also. I just didn't know these artists. And I had isolated myself through working with this person who I trusted. I had no idea what a narcissist was. I looked up to him so much, and I can analyze it and say, oh well, I had a pretty shitty relationship with my dad. There was a lot of verbal abuse growing up in terms of my own intelligence and how I felt about myself, and obviously that affected me. And I don't know, maybe that obviously didn't help in terms of needing approval or wanting approval from someone. And you're looking for, I think I was in some way looking for someone to save me, and I think that's a very common theme for a lot of people, particularly women. And obviously it's a male dominated industry, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, things got really, 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 really twisted and dark. And here I was with all these songs that I had no rights to anything. Ultimately, I hadn't paid for the studio. I had no money to pay for the studio. I had given my time, my energy, my love, my talent, my heart, my soul, things that are not quantifiable, and certainly in a court of law wouldn't mean anything, right? But at some point, I was in a situation where I knew it was essentially like an ultimatum situation, and I knew that I needed to close the door. When you're dealing with a narcissist, they can kind of switch things and place the blame on you. Again, I'm not a psychologist, therapist. This is just my lived experience, again, before knowing and understanding these things more deeply. But yeah, it was pretty horrible. I tried to get the album back. through a new lawyer friend who offered to do it pro bono because I was struggling to just pay my rent and buy food at that time. Forget about paying back my student loans. It was a really dark period in my life, and I didn't perform for over a year after that. I could barely get myself, to balance the things I had to do to be an adult, of course, that we all do. And it was a really low point. And even after that, my guard was up. My guard was up big time. I couldn't even share the story because I would have been judged. I was not at all close with my family at that time, for sure. And again, I was an adult. I was 28 when this whole thing fell out after a few years. And yeah, it was really painful. So anyway, True Serum is coming from that space. I'm sharing that as, the inspiration, but it really was never intended to be a song that was about me. It's always been a song that is about everyone because each one of us has trauma, and moving through that trauma involves feeling it and experiencing it and going deep with it, not just avoiding it, sweeping it under the rug, all those ways the ways that we try and cope as human beings to avoid pain. So yeah, Truth Serum happened at the perfect moment, and I'm so grateful to have been in the studio with Jake Pace, the person with whom I created the song. And it was a safe space. Again, it was many years later, different situation. This was out in LA. The original experience, I was in New York. I was living in New York for many years first as a young artist. And yeah. So anyway, that's the inspiration behind it. And may that song awaken healing in the world. May it awaken someone to break a cycle, to break a toxic pattern in their life. The whole point of the song is that. And it happens to be a really hot EDM song, so that's a bonus. The universe that song lives in, of the songs that I recorded for this LA project that was dissolved, True Serum was the first song that I knew, wow, we hit on something that is expressing me more fully, who I am as a fully embodied artist. And for me, production had been the hardest thing to come by. When you're an artist, there are lots of producers who have ideas, right? And they want to say, oh, do this or do this, and as a singer-songwriter, pianist, you get kind of globbed into this little box, but that was never fully me. I always knew the electronic element was important for me, but it took a long time to, manifest this great partnership. And I really hope that we're able to do more songs together because that was truly an amazing experience. I am forever grateful. Anyway, may you love the song, and thank you for listening.